Afternoon, friends. Welcome back. I know it's been a little bit since I made a video, and I haven't had a whole lot of time to actually work on anything. It's been busy around the shop with parts and other projects. Anyway, I'm finally getting the chance to work on my 1960 Panhead. So I've had it on the lift now for a couple of weeks, and I've needed to work on this thing, and today I'm going to dive into it. But I want to give you the backstory on the bike. I bought this bike, I think 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, so I've had it for a little while. Obviously, in its current configuration is not how I purchased it. This bike I actually bought from a friend's stepdad. He bought this bike, I believe, in the early 80s. Could have been longer than that. This bike was a chopper when he bought it, and he did not want it in the chopper configuration. So he took this bike and stripped it down and put it into the frame and the current setup that it is right now, minus the bars and a few things that I've changed out. He got the bike built, rode it around for quite a while, and then it ended up having a stroke and then pushed the bike into his shed where it sat for a number of years, kind of hanging out. He'd always hoped that he was going to get back to being better and able to ride again, but that day never came, unfortunately, so he decided to sell the bike. Thankfully, I was the guy that was able to buy the bike. Truly honored to own it, honestly. It's the only Panhead I've ever been able to buy, and I love it. I'll take you around the bike, kind of show you some of the features so you can see what's on this thing and give you, my thoughts and perspective on it before diving into what's wrong with it. We'll start out here at the front of the bike and we'll talk about some of the things that I've done to it. Obviously, you can see that there's a newer paint job. My buddy Chris at Wicked Snot Paint and Flake painted the bike for me. I used to work with him back in the day doing paint and body work for motorcycles, and this is one of the paint jobs that he worked on for me, so I'm very grateful for that. Obviously, as you can see, the fork legs have been polished and cleaned up. The nacelle itself has been powder coated along with the handlebars. The wheels have been completely rebuilt, so all new guts inside, new spokes. I used the same hoops that had come with this bike. Obviously, the tires are replaced as well. Some of the touches on here that I have changed. The handlebars are a modern Softail Slim style handlebar. The speedometer obviously is not correct and it does not work properly. The intake is from the cover itself is from Lowbrow Customs. It is running an S&S Super E carburetor. It is running a Mallory ignition, and it's also running an alternator. So the alternator was already on the bike. It was a point system. I did upgrade it to the Mallory. And then, of course, I changed out the intake here. It does, like I said, have the Super E-carb. I don't really love the E-carbs. I don't love S&S carbs, so I'm thinking about changing that out. Not exactly sure what I want to go with. The frame on this bike is a modern shovel head frame, so that's why it fits a little different. This is not the drop tail style frame itself, so the oil bag, which is not proper for this bike, does not fit properly. This should have been a kick-only bike, but that's not the oil tank for it, obviously. The rear wheel, same situation. This thing has been all rebuilt, all new guts inside the hub there, new spokes, new tire. This has got a Panhead, older Panhead style tailpipe. Obviously, as you can see, the paint scheme is pretty cool. One of the features that I really like on the bike is the hidden features. There's an American flag in the back there. I do need to get some trim on the license plate here. I did lose a bolt in there on my first ride, so I do have to replace that. I do not have the proper chain guard for this bike, so I'll have to work on getting one of those. It does have a set of progressive suspension shocks, and of course a tin inner and outer primary. It does have a chain drive primary. Something I'm thinking about upgrading to is a belt drive. I'm not sure if or when I will do that. Still running the current mousetrap. I do like that. It does work super well. It's actually really easy to maneuver and it's comfortable. I do need to oil it. But yeah, this is the setup on the motorcycle. It does have a steering damper. This bike did have a sidecar when the original owner, or the second owner that I bought it from, had it. Unfortunately, he had sold the sidecar because he wasn't using it and didn't think he would ever have a need for it, so that is gone. I did have a new old stock Saddleman seat that came out of the box with a parts buy that I had picked up quite a few years ago, and I was kind of waiting for the right bike to put this on. And I like it on this. I think it fits really well. As you can see too, the rear fender struts, those have been powder coated black as well. There's some little black touches here. I just kind of wanted to make the bike really red and black. As you can see in the tank there's the Harley Davidson symbol and some weapons. I like the Rogue Status Design. I think that's called Rogue Status or Rogue Industries, I'm not really sure. In a previous life, I was an FFL dealer, and I loved it, but with regulations and things that have gone on in life, it made more sense for me to get out of the business, so I did. Anyway, this is my 1960 Panhead. I wanted to show it to you before I started working on it. So I'm going to go ahead and get set up here and get to what the problem is. Now that I've shown off the bike, it's time to figure out what's wrong with it. What the issue is that's going on with this motorcycle. I took it to a car and motorcycle show a few weeks ago. Bike kicks over great, starts up and runs, ride the bike all the way to the show. Sat in line waiting to get in, got a little hot, so I shut it down, pushed it the rest of the way. I didn't want to be in stop and go traffic while this thing is, essentially breaking in. This is the first real ride that I've taken on the motorcycle itself, so I didn't really want to put it to chance. So I pushed the bike in, set it up, hung out at the show all day long, enjoyed the show, got ready to go home, kicked it 2 times, started right up, riding home. I get a couple miles from home, I'm going down a big hill, and it feels like I'm losing fluid, like I'm losing fuel, excuse me. So I'm twisting the throttle and I'm kind of, chugging in and out of going. You could feel it's dying, almost like I'm out of gas or I'm running on fuel vapors, which I know that I'm not because I have filled the tank. I know that this thing is full of fuel. I know that it should be getting gas at that point. So something's going on. Either the fuel filter is clogged or something is happening. One of the things I did notice is that the petcock at the bottom is leaking. So that's going to have to be addressed. I'm going to take that apart, clean it, see if I can get it to work. I do have a replacement one, so I may just replace it. I've got a brand new one in the package. It might make the most sense to just swap it out. So that might be what I do. Anyway, as I'm going down this hill, I'm kind of coasting, and the bike is kind of chugging, and it backfires really hard and really loud, and then shuts completely off, and it will not start. So that's where I'm at. So today on the lift, I've chosen to pull the plug and kick this thing over and see if it'll fire. And I'll show you what it's doing. It's kind of interesting. I'm no expert by any means, so I'm not exactly sure what this is. This is something I'm going to have to dive into, but let me go ahead and get the camera close here and show you what it's doing. Hopefully that's zoomed in good enough. I noticed today that if I turn on the ignition switch, I immediately start getting spark at the plug. And if I mess with the switch enough, I can get this to spark. So what I'm thinking is my start place is at the dash here. To pull the dash cover, check my wires and make sure nothing has come loose. I suspect there's something wrong with the ignition switch. Now this is a replacement ignition switch. The original one that I had, unfortunately, was locked. They couldn't find the keys for this thing. The locksmith said they couldn't make me keys because it was also a replacement ignition switch. So it was easier for me just to buy one. This one is brand new, but it's been a few years since I've done anything with the bike, or I've been trying to get this thing done, I should say. And it's never really been used. That doesn't mean it's a good product. These things are kind of junky nowadays. You buy them from wherever online and they're mostly produced in, who knows where, and they're not good. So I think that's my issue. I think my problem is this thing is sparking because I have a circuit that's not fully switching on or fully switching off, or something has happened there. I'm not exactly sure. So I'm going to dive into that by pulling this cover off and see where I can get with that. Okay, I've gone ahead and loosened the screw here for the dash. I'm going to go ahead and pull the dash, and then I'm going to check all my contacts here to see what is tight and what's loose. Maybe that's my issue. Everything seems tight, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this stuff out of the way. I'm going to flip the switch again and see if we have any change. The system still seems to spark with the ignition on, which I feel is not correct. I'm not exactly 100% sure how these ignition systems work, so maybe I'm wrong. I think I need to do a little research and kind of figure out exactly why that is. I feel like maybe I've got a bad ground somewhere or something isn't hooked up properly. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't chased any wires yet. I'm not sure exactly how far I'm going to tear this thing down today, but I'm going to go ahead and do a little, online research and see what I can come up with.